Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Amour is over. Amen to that.
Maman?
Andy, if you were lying on your deathbed, having just succumbed to your spouse's efforts to euthanize you, where would you want your friends and family to post their condolences?
I would want them to go visit
Is that not a good? Toss?
If they didn't leave, if they didn't leave messages to me at Instagram.com/thenextreel,
yeah,
I would be hurt from beyond.
Sure. You want to know. You want to know that you can share with them and know that it's going out into the world, that other people can share their thoughts. So I think you're right. I think you do that at Instagram.com/thenextreel.
And that's also where, I'd want them to go there because then they could also learn more about the shows we're talking about, not just on this show, but on Marvel Movie Minute, on Trailer Rewind, on the Film Board. There's so many things that they can glean from that. And it would be my final gift to them.
And there's a lot to learn. So
there
much.
Really is. There's a lot of fun pictures to look at.
Oh, such good pictures.
And after they're there, they should head over to their podcatcher of choice, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Overcast, Downcast, Stitcher, wherever it is, and they should leave a rating and review. There's nothing like a nice 5-star review to tell us those exact same thoughts about about their thoughts of the show and how they feel. By doing that, it helps other people find the show too.
It sure does. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time. We don't like asking for it. Let's just be clear. We don't like asking for reviews as much as you probably aren't crazy about taking your time to go do the reviews. Just know it really helps others find the show, so we appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Gracias. Or merci, more fitting for this particular film.
Andy, let's talk about Amour.
Isn't it odd that this, one could argue Z is the first in this series that is a non-translated title.
Right. That I guess you could make that case for Z.
One could. Technically, The Postman was both, at least upon its release, The Postman Il Postino.
Right. They just wanted to cover all their bases. Yeah.
And here, I've never seen this released as Love. It's always Amour.
It sounds so wrong, releasing it as Love. That sounds broken.
But that's what it is. But isn't that weird that it actually sounds better? And I think it's just a word that everybody knows when you say Amour. It translates well, and so I just had to point that out. This is an interesting one here, and I guess technically we'll have the same thing next week.
You are an astute observer of film titles and language.
Yes.
So
that's what I'm here for.
You would be the one to catch that.
Now, this is the second time I saw this. I saw this in theaters, actually. And I walked out, doubled over, because I had just been punched in the gut. And once again, I watched this and immediately felt like I had just been punched in the gut again. It's a tough film. It is a tough film. Is it tougher than Cries and Whispers? Like, where's the level of toughness? It's a different sort of tough, I guess.
I think it's important that you bring up that comparison, because I found myself wondering, like, just where the line is between this and Bergman. Like, are we just missing a coat of red paint and some genital mutilation? Because we're almost there with how I felt about this. I actually think it's safe to say I enjoyed my experience of this movie less than with Cries and Whispers. I did not like it. I did not like my experience of it. I went back and forth between being extraordinarily bored to extraordinarily sad. And I thought, this is going to be a very easy film to talk about, because I'm just gonna, toss it off and be mad, and I'm going to share my rage with Andy, and he'll tell me it's all lost in the quibbles, and it'll be fine, and we'll be a 1 and a 5 in our Letterboxd review. And then 30 minutes later, I'm standing in the kitchen and I'm making myself some lunch, and I find I'm weeping. This movie. Like, how does this movie do this? And so I'm interested in kind of pulling it apart. I don't like it, but to say that it wasn't impactful would be deeply disingenuous.
Well, it's easy to say you don't like a film like this because it's a really hard film to watch, right? I mean, it is about being old, and it's about being in a place when you're in a relationship with somebody else who is also old, who has something happen, and they basically start that long, slow decline to death. And, what is the process of actually caring for somebody at this particular point in their lives? It's a very hard watch because of that. And because of that, it's not a fun watch. I mean, it is just a very rough time throughout. That being said, the story is incredibly strong. The performances of the two leads, they're just, really amazing. And it's an incredibly honest story. And I think that's why it affects so much stronger. And to that end, I would absolutely, if I had to pick between this or Cries and Whispers, I would be putting this on first, because I just feel like I'm getting more out of the story in the relationship of this couple than I am in kind of just trying to pull apart all the different things that Bergman might be trying to say in his film.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that point. I think we've got a class of films that really are those films that I'd rather just play with sand than watch either of them. Like, it's really that kind of experience for me. But to say it wasn't just sort of beautiful in its way, again, that tosses off kind of where the film is going. It's interesting, though, because I kept coming back to this reflection. Is this a subject area that you can celebrate universally? Right? Is this something is he telling this story that is something that is a human issue to the point that we watch it and we all get it? And is that, or is this more of a Michael Haneke therapy film? Like, this is something that is a uniquely Haneke experience. We'll talk a little bit about getting it made and where the story comes from in a bit. Is this just something that only he can write about, and really he made it for him? And if you kind of get along with it, then you might be part of that train too. But it's not something that he ever expected a mass market audience to latch on to.
I don't know. I feel like there's more than that. I feel like this is far from funny games, right? This is not in the same class as that type of film where he is purposefully making a film that is going to poke and provoke and cause reactions. This film, I do think that the context of it allowed for a story that is really kind of a universal human story. And as one could argue cold as it is, the way that Haneke makes his films, I think that Michael Haneke is a very distant filmmaker. That doesn't mean that it's cold in emotion. Like, I think that there is plenty of motion going on between particularly Georges, because Anne is kind of not in a place. Although I will say that there are some pretty powerful moments from Anne as she is dealing with all of this. And so I think between the two, there's a lot of emotion, even if it is in a very kind of distant style that Haneke uses. I think it absolutely is a universal story.
I think this is one of those movies that maybe I need to acknowledge I'm not ready for yet, right? Because what this movie makes you face is a point in your life that is, for me, 30 years down the road. And that's a lot of years down the road of life that I'm ready and excited to live. And so this movie can't help but provoke that sort of what if experience. Like, what if something happens right now and one of us is suddenly in a place where we have to deal with this and have to live with caring for somebody that we love very deeply and figure out how to watch them die. And that is a torturous thing, I think. And that's part of why I'm reacting sort of the way I do. Like, I recognize what the movie is and what it stands for and what he's going for, and also don't like it because I'm not ready for that experience yet. Not saying that any of us ever are really ready for that experience, but I don't think I've sort of grown into the that sort of space of grief that I didn't want it. I didn't want it.
Well, and I had just gone through something somewhat comparable with, when my mother-in-law passed away somewhat recently.
Sure.
And there was definitely some feeling of that as I watched this. And it was totally different context as far as how kind of what ended up leading to that. But still, it's just there's a lot of similarities in the way that the husband and wife handle that, in the way that the children react to it. And so I saw a lot of that in it. And in a weird way, I actually think it kind of got me through the film a little easier, actually, on the second watch than it did on the first watch, because I felt like I had kind of been in that world more recently. So I do think that there is something to, like, being in a place for it and having kind of because it's not a place that, kind of acknowledging old age, acknowledging death, kind of this old thing called life that we're all kind of riddled with, and this point where it's going to end, I think can be something that a lot of people just don't want to think about and don't want to deal with. And when somebody pushes it in front of you and you're watching, a 2-hour film about a husband trying to take care of his wife as she slowly dies, it's hard. There's a lot of stuff that you don't want to have to see throughout it.
2 hours and 6 minutes, Andy. Let's get every bite of grief out of this movie.
That's right.
I think that's really, accurate. And we are dealing with something that's been portrayed in films before. And so in terms of our conversation around Best Pictures, and Best Pictures dealing with the slow decline of a loved one, where does this one stand?
Well, it's not even films that have been nominated, but it's like this one did get a nomination for Best Picture. There are other films out there like The Notebook, Philadelphia, Still Alice, etc., that approach this sort of thing in different ways. And those are just a few. I mean, obviously, there's many of them. What is it about this one that really kind of sets it apart, that pushes it up to that notch of saying, wow, not only should this have been nominated for Best Foreign Language Film, but it should absolutely have been nominated for Best Picture? Like, where's that line with this particular film? Like, do you see something about this that says, oh, even though this is a hard watch and I wish I didn't have to go through it, I can see why this is worthy of being nominated for Best Picture?
This is a performer's film, and I think that's one of the things that makes it really stand out for me, is that we see an age and two performers who are exemplary at their craft, right? And that what Trintignant and Riva bring to this experience is second to none. I think that's one of the things that is unique. It is a showcase for actors, and Haneke gets right out of the way. Right. I think the production of the film, it is not flashy. It is not, it's hard to say it's cinematic. It's less cinematic than it is portraiture, right? The use of long shots, the use of still camera to give us the sense of space and room and performance in this movie. Those are two things that really stand out to me in the way this one, I think, has carved out its space in the experience of death and dying films.
Look at Judi Dench in Iris, where she had Alzheimer's. She was fantastic in that film, and I think she got an award nomination for it. And same thing with Jim Broadbent playing her beleaguered husband, dealing with taking care of her.
A lot of similarities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Still Alice, and that was a younger Alzheimer thing with Julianne Moore. In every case, they're very much performer films, and that's what people notice them for, and that's largely what they get recognized for. And so it's interesting to me that this one does kind of stand out as saying, hey, not only is this a great performer film, but, Haneke deserves a nod for his direction, and the picture deserves a nod for Best Picture. I just find that very interesting that it got that recognition. And who knows? It's such a game as far as what gets nominated and what doesn't. I think to a certain extent, you're right, that the way that Haneke gets out of the way and allows the story to tell itself, and is not a director who pushes for kind of the emotion and directs. You could argue Jonathan Demme probably pushed the script and the emotions a little more for Philadelphia, and there's obviously a whole court thing going on in that one, but that became more of an actor film, and it's like, well, as Best Picture, it's not quite up there. Mm-hmm. So I think that there might be some case as far as, the way that Haneke constructs his stories and then chooses to direct it, that might lend itself better to that.
I totally agree with that. And I think that's one of the things that you see in this film, that there's a lot of drama left on the table, right? There are so many, as I'm watching this, so many opportunities for, particularly father and daughter to unwind with each other. There are so many sort of narrative opportunities to spin off and talk about, the case for elder abuse in this movie. And all of those little elements were left as little elements, like little sort of one scene we're going to wrap up and move on to get back to the experience of these two people. Had Jonathan Demme been behind the camera on this thing, we would have had a court case. We would have had an elderly emancipation case. We would have had an elder abuse case. Like, somebody would have had their day in trial for this movie. But that wasn't what this movie was about, right? This movie was about the experience of an old man taking care of his old wife, and the experience of watching somebody he loves suffer deeply, and how you internalize that and how you live every day with it. And then you stop.
It does make me want to look at Iris again, though, and say, well, what did they do in that film? Because honestly, I know I saw it, I just don't remember it that well. But it's like, what was it about that film that did not push it to that level, you know? Yeah, because I know there was a lot of recognition for the performances, but not so much for the film, as far as I recall.
I mentioned earlier use of long shots. We've talking about just sort of Haneke getting out of the way. And then as I'm thinking about this, watching the movie, I'm like, I should really check that one website that one time that we used to talk about all the time that cataloged the number of shots per film. And I couldn't ever remember the name of it. And you found it.
I did. Yes, we used to use this quite a bit, Cinemetrics, to look at the average shot length that different movies would use and like how quick the cuts were. And you pointed out, I mean, there are some long scenes, like single take or single camera angles for scenes where you're just staring at something for a very long time. I mean, the opening of this film, after kind of the initial kind of break-in into the apartment, we cut to a theater and we're just watching the audience sit, and then the show starts and the performance starts, I should say, and we're watching the audience watch the performer on stage. And it's just like, how long are we staring at these people? It's going on for quite some time.
Well, and then he does this thing where he goes to sleep, like our characters go to sleep, and I thought everything broke. I thought I lost power in my house because the screen was dark, black for so long. I thought I need to check that. I literally paused the movie just to see to get a playhead.
And I have a new definition for our glossary because of this, Pete.
Outstanding.
I know,
what is it?
We don't use it. It's called Khondji Nights.
Oh,
because I think that this is something that Darius Khondji did so well in when working with David Fincher, is really for night scenes, just making it so dark that you could almost not see anything that was actually going on. And here, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, here Khondji is again. Really just proving that he doesn't like using lights, any blue lights or anything to signify night. It is just like black that you're staring at.
I love it. Khondji Nights going in the dictionary.
Oh, but anyway, back to the cinemetrics. So I thought I'd look at a couple of the movies that we had been talking about in recent times on this particular series. Life is Beautiful, Roberto Benigni's film, has an average shot length of 6 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of average across the board. When you jump to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, our next one in the series, that is at 4.5 seconds. So, which is odd because it actually feels like the shots would be shorter. And maybe it's just because of the action, but I felt like Ang Lee had some rather longer shots in that one.
Ang Lee constructs sequences, though, that are very, very similar, of shots that are very similar. And so they feel, I think, like they're strung together as a single shot. My sense memory of it is like he gets probably 15 seconds out of a shot that feels that long of just bamboo swaying. but they're definitely short.
Definitely short.
So,
yeah.
Anyway.
Now, when it comes to Haneke, unfortunately, Cinemetrics has not broken down Amour. So I can't break that one down specifically, but I can give you some information on some other Haneke films. And when I look at it, Time of the Wolf has the shortest average shot length at 6.1. Let's see, the longest one is, this is tricky because now people are starting to just do particular scenes. Funny Games looks like it's closer to 19.5 seconds average per shot. Cash is 31.1 seconds per shot. Code Unknown, 35.6 seconds per shot. The White Ribbon, 19.4. And so it's definitely, I think, a Haneke thing.
Order of magnitude longer. Wow.
Yeah. Right. He's definitely kind of jumping up a notch. And even, and now I'm curious. Let me just, I don't know if I should type Roma right now or save that for next week because I don't know if it's in here. But I guess I will do some research and maybe jump into this next week and see.
I think Roma's average shot length, whatever happens, is brought up a lot by the opening, like 3 shots.
Well, Roma's not in here, but unfortunately, Cuarón is, and mostly with Gravity, which is also at Haneke lengths. We're looking 25, 26 seconds per shot. So
I'm asking myself as I watch this movie, is this a showcase for a great writer and secondarily a great director? Part of me thinks that no one else could have written this film. This is a uniquely Haneke film experience. but really, you could hand the script over to Khondji and say, "Let's go. Just do your best." That I'm not entirely sure if this is a great showcase of a great director, because it is sublimely mechanical, right? I watch this thing and I think there's like this is something that my French is not good enough to read the script, to read the nuance in French, but my sense is that I'm looking at what's on the page and performers doing their best to interpret it. And I'm not sure how great of an example this is of Haneke as a fantastic director. I love the script.
Have you seen much of his work? I'm just curious to compare.
I've seen a number of them. I've seen Funny Games. I've seen A Piano Teacher. And let's see, and Amour. That's what I've seen.
Okay, I've seen Funny Games, Cachet, and Amour. And Funny Games, I saw the original, the German one, not the remake.
And I haven't seen, it feels like I should have seen Time of the Wolf. Like, that's one of the movies I feel like of all of these, I should have seen that one first. But I haven't. So what are you going to do?
Haneke's not a director that I seek out because I do find his filmmaking style is so distant. And while I do find them incredibly interesting to watch, it really requires me to... I guess I just have to be prepared for him. Funny Games is 100% a film you really have to be ready for, because it beats you over the head from the minute that insane music kicks in when the opening credits start. Cachet is one that it's just, I think it really enhanced. It is enhanced when you're really paying attention to all the little subtle details that can pass you by very quickly if you're not actually watching with a lot of attention. And so that's what I find.
We've talked about Funny Games on SatMat. Do you when you talk about it, do you like and appreciate the film?
I do. I definitely think what he's doing is like really interesting, and he is really pushing. Like, he is doing some interesting button pushing of people to kind of just violence in film, and the way that things play out, I think, is done in a really interesting way that I thought was incredibly effective. It also, like, when I saw that he was doing a remake, I'm like, ooh, wow! I don't know if I'd want to go watch that movie again. That was a tough one. And same, if I had seen the American one, I was like, I don't know if I would want to go watch the original. I just think that he makes very challenging films. And so I don't know. I think that they're really interesting films to think about, and they don't leave your brain. Like, they really stick. And so I find him really interesting. It's just, it's a challenge to watch. And this is a challenge in a different way. This one, I think that the way that he made this one, it still is very distant, but it is a more personal, more emotional story.
You should see The Piano Teacher. And maybe watch it in a little trio of films. You would watch this, and you would watch Secretary, and maybe you would throw in that one from that director you don't watch. Was that
Nymphomaniac?
Nymphomaniac. Yeah. You should watch those three. A little trio of The Piano Teacher, Secretary, and Nymphomaniac.
Wow. I feel like I'm being set up.
No, I would never. I would never.
Okay. So I have a question, though, to that end. Because Haneke, I think he is a filmmaker who purposefully provokes, right? He makes things that push buttons and provokes. I mentioned last week that he actually, in context of Holocaust films and in kind of an awards group interview, he had been asked about Holocaust films, and he said that none of them should be made unless it's something like Night and Fog or something like that. And just something that was very just documentarian, because it is something that requires a distance, and you shouldn't be exploiting it. And I don't want to sound dismissive of that particular thought or the Holocaust in general, but is there a line when telling any story of grief? Like, is Haneke saying that? Should he also say, you know what, you're crossing a line for some people who are dealing with going through an emotional situation with a dying relative? I find his comment to be really interesting, because as an artist, it's like, well, where is the line then? Like, all of a sudden, it's like you're saying that that's such a big emotional thing for people. But isn't this too? I mean, everyone ends up dealing with grief in some way and death. And it's just like, I just find it interesting that he views lines in certain situations, but not others.
I think you can make the case pretty quickly that films about the Holocaust are examining what humanity has done to one another, like taking an active role through violence and, racial ideology to, hurt and kill and decimate an entire population. And grief and dying is a universal human experience, right? We're not looking at an age, specifically talking about old age and the health impacts of that happen when you're old that causes you to go down this train. And when you're talking about the Holocaust, that's examining specifically a state of hate. And this film is not examining a state of hate. This film is actually examining a state of love that is so powerful it causes you to do things you never imagined you would be capable of doing to another person that you care about so deeply. And I think that's something that's an important distinguishing factor that I think that, when I hear him talk about how he feels about Holocaust films, that's coming from somebody who grew up in the experience of and proximity to, just judging by his age, right, where he is, born in Munich, like he is a Austro-German nationality, like that's where he is. So he has a perspective on what people can do to one another for ideology that is different than just the human experience of age. And I think that is a distinguishing factor for me.
Sure, I can see that, and I'm just asking because I'm curious. But I do think that there probably are some people who might have gone through similar situations, and they may not say what he said about he's crossing a line, but they may say that's not a film I will ever watch because it's crossing a personal line for me, and I don't want to bring any of that up again. So I think that that's what I find interesting about art, and that's why personally I disagree with his statement, and I say, you know what? There's a lot of value in using art to explore the pain and kind of the world of this to help people better understand and hopefully help society continue to find ways to improve.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that this is how we process, and we have to be able to make movies about it, right? I mean, I might not like the movies. That's going to be okay too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about getting made, Andy.
I just thought, speaking of personal stories, this one does come somewhat a personal story because Haneke had actually dealt with an ill aunt, and she had raised him, and it was kind of a difficult time in his life because he had to really suffer with her as she kind of went through a lot. She was ill for a very long time. She had very heavy rheumatism and lived by herself for a very long time, didn't want to go into a nursing home, had even asked him to euthanize her. He pulled a lot from that whole story of his aunt to build this and put it together because she did end up committing suicide. And it was a kind of just a very personal story. What's interesting is he couldn't figure out how to end it. And from my understanding is they were already moving forward with it, and they had the set built, and he designed their house to be like his parents' house. And so he knew where everything was, and he just had a way about it. And he ended up writing the rest of the script in the set because it really helped him. It put him into that place of these aged people trying to kind of deal with this.
We didn't mention earlier the actual smothering. You want to talk about how that hit you?
I remember in the theater, it blindsided me because I was just not expecting that at all. I had just had no hints or anything as to how the movie was going to end, and he's just kind of telling his little story, and then all of a sudden, boom. And I just remember snapping awake and just like a shiver going up my spine as I realized what was going on. And it just was just devastating to watch and deal with.
I love that you characterized that you had to snap awake. I think that's appropriate language.
But it's not like I was asleep, but it's just like he's lulling you, just like he's kind of calming her down with the way that he's telling this really just kind of, I mean, it's kind of a sad story about being in camp and how he's miserable and all this stuff. And but the whole thing with the flowers and the stars and just like everything is it just kind of is so peaceful. And it's so like he gets her to kind of calm down and everything. And then boom, it just does it. I was just like, whoa.
Right.
Oof.
Right. Yeah, it was exactly that for me too. And I had been, in and out of just this experience of, oh, this movie is a snooze. But the end, I think that's the thing that forces, it's like opens the gate of the experience of the rest of the movie. Right. And I didn't know what I was taking in until that happened. And then you're just awash with the entire experience of their relationship. And I think that's the piece that I find so powerful and so sort of just that lasting experience of the film for me is just allowing that trigger, allowing the old man to smother his wife with a pillow and to do it with his own face buried in the pillow. Like there's a sense of like the physicality of like, is he going to be capable of doing this? Is he strong enough to do this? Is he able enough to do this? But that he put so much of himself in that experience to euthanize his wife. And
then just to be clear, as far as the end of the film, because he goes through that, and then there's the return of the pigeon, which he finally catches, and then he's writing the letter to the daughter, and after he's cut the flowers, and and we know where that is because we've seen it at the very beginning of the film.
But we don't have a sense of time passing. Like we don't have a sense of how long he's in there alone.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, it seems like it's been a while based on how she looks at the very beginning of the film. But also what I find interesting is they never actually at the beginning or end reveal what happens with him. Now, I'm assuming he dies. I'm assuming he dies in his bed. And when he hears her in the kitchen and he goes in there, my sense is that that's kind of it's tricky because early in the film we have a memory of her playing the piano and it cuts to him and then he turns the music off and you realize he's just having a memory while he's listening to this music. And then at the end it's like, okay, so is he having a memory of Anne here as she's washing the dishes and then they are getting ready to leave? Or is this like her soul like coming and beckoning him to the other side sort of thing, which is how I end up taking it, because we don't ever, I'm assuming he doesn't just walk out of the house and disappear off into the wilderness or something.
That would be less satisfying.
That would be a lot less satisfying. He's now living in the mountains of the Alps.
Right.
But it's interesting. Like at the beginning, there's no reveal of finding a second body.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I actually went back and watched the beginning again just to see if anybody was playing around in that bedroom, but they never go to the bedroom. And the next time we see anybody in the house at the end of the film, it's just the daughter walking around the sort of hallowed space. So yeah, that's how I took it too. And I actually thought in terms of vague endings, I thought this one was pretty satisfying.
I find it very satisfying. The way that he leaves with her, I just find very, very conclusive to the relationship, and it's what I needed. And I do find as I watch the end, I'm like, I guess I don't really need to find out that he is dead in the other room. I don't need to see that in order to find the resolution I needed. And
I'm not one to love these kinds of endings, and this one actually feels pretty resolved.
What'd you think of Jean-Louis Trintignant?
The Trent.
Our second actor returning, a second lead actor returning in this series, since we had Liv Ullmann in Cries and Whispers, who we had talked about in The Emigrants way back.
That's right. I think his performance in terms of just his experience of, being the aging husband and being able to convey arguments that I've always found myself having in my head when confronting these kinds of things in my own life, when he says to his daughter, who is expressing her grief over losing her own mother, when he says, your concern carries no weight for me right now. Like, you have to know, I know you're upset that I'm not calling you and keeping you updated, but honestly, I don't need you to know what's going on here. We're dealing with so much. The weight of our experience of the world right now is so heavy. I just can't. You don't get that from us. And I found that that scene just ripped my chest open. Like that was an incredibly powerful, but albeit brief exchange between the two of them that I thought was incredibly powerful. And I think it really highlights what Trintignant is great at. We have another little scene like that when he tells off the nurse, the elder abuse nurse, and pays her off to get out of the house. I think he's cold in these sequences, and as mechanical as Haneke is, you can tell that they came together for a reason.
Very true. I did find it interesting that when it comes to award nominations for this, that he had far fewer than Emmanuel Riva. Even though I think that his performance is equally as powerful, it's just a different type of strength in his particular performance. It's very quiet, and it's dealing with the frustration and dealing with the anger and kind of keeping everything behind, as he just kind of goes through the motions of doing what he needs to do to take care of Anne.
What was was it an Eddie Murphy performance? I can't remember. There's a scene in a comedy where it's a movie about actors, and he says, "Oh, you've got to play the character who has a disability."
Oh no, Eddie Murphy. No, that would be Robert Downey Jr.
That's right. Oh, in Tropic Thunder. Yes, that was absolutely Robert Downey Jr. I hasten to hearken back to Tropic Thunder and Robert Downey Jr. when comparing to this film, but there may be some truth to that. I mean, Emmanuel Riva dominates in this movie because she plays exceptionally stroke symptomatic. Like you see everything you expect to be going on inside of her in her performance in this movie. It's stunning and painful. When her speech is affected and she can no longer move, and when she spits at him, the only action she has to do is to take the water that he has put in her mouth and spit it back at him. That is horrifying and nails my sort of headcanon of that experience. It is, for me, it's every bit the experience of The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which, as you know, is another film that I don't need to watch another time.
Well, and, you brought up the spitting scene, which was incredibly powerful, but equally powerful. That's when he kind of breaks and slaps her, and her reaction to that just was like, just the shock and the understanding and the devastation. Everything in that moment was just so hard. And when he comes home and finds her on the floor because she had apparently been trying to throw herself out the window because she just didn't want to deal with it anymore. And, just the conversations that she has about just not wanting to go through all of this, not wanting to deal with it herself, not wanting to, torment him and torture him. It's a very difficult place, and having to drag it out for as long as they do. I mean, as you said, there's no sense of time really, but clearly it's a while, and it's just a very hard thing to deal with. And the two of them, I just think are just beautiful performers throughout all of this. They just deliver stellar performances and heartbreaking performances. It's beautiful the way that they build all of this on screen.
Isabelle Huppert as the daughter, Eva, she's in and out, but she's great. She doesn't have a very large performance, but she sort of punctuates the film with the grief of a child. Yeah,
the grief of a child who has her own life and has to listen to, as you said, the moments when dad says, "You know what, this is my problem. You need to step out.
Yeah,
you're not the one here dealing with this day after day. Yeah, you're doing your own thing. We're doing ours. So I appreciate your concern, but step back." And having to deal with that was really interesting. And just watching her, and she's just really a powerful performer. She's done a lot of great things for a very long time. I mean, what was the one she did? Oh, it was the late 2000s, or no, I can't remember. But she's done a few things that really stand out. But she had done Time of the Wolf. She's done The Piano Teacher. She's done some things with Haneke before, so is definitely kind of in his circles. But of course, just recently did Elle, which was another really powerful performance that she delivered there.
We've talked about Darius Khondji.
For a film that is so static, so often you look at the cinematographer as what are they going to do that's really interesting with the camera? But remember, their job is really about lighting the scenes and creating a look for the film. And with a film that is so static, you have a lot of time of looking at these particular images, and he lights this space. I mean, it's almost like a one-room play.
It's a play,
right? I mean,
yeah.
that's really what it is. We're in this house the entire time. And I think he does an exceptional job of just creating this world and really giving us a beautiful look throughout. And beautiful in that kind of dark Khondji way.
That's another thing that I think you appreciate more in the last 20 minutes of the film than you do in the first, hour and 50. It's a movie that I think the tone grew on me to the point where the first time we see that kitchen without anybody in it, I realized what was going on and the real sort of love that they put to the desaturated kind of European green chic of these old apartments. And I thought it was pretty powerful. That Khondji, he knows how to run the camera.
Yeah, he's done a good job a few times.
You want to talk about awards?
We should talk about awards. I suppose. Yeah. This film had 82 wins, 105 other nominations. Definitely popular in the awards circles. In fact, a lot of film critics listed this, if not in their top 10, definitely the top. I mean, they were just really in love with this film. It was way up there. At the Oscars, Best Picture, this is why we're here, it was nominated for Best Picture, but lost to Argo. This was in that period shortly after they increased the number of nominations. And in this particular year, it was Argo, Amour, Beasts of the Southern Wild, Django Unchained, Les Miserables, Life of Pi, Lincoln, Silver Linings Playbook, and Zero Dark 30. Argo is the one that won. Should it have? I don't think so. I think there were definitely better films that year, but I wouldn't have picked Amour either. So that's how Picture went down. Lead actress, Emmanuelle Riva was nominated for Best Lead Actress. She lost to Jennifer Lawrence in Silver Linings Playbook. And at the time, and I believe it still holds true, she was 85 years old and 321 days. And is the oldest ever nominee for Best Actress. And it's interesting, she earned this honor the same year that the award had its youngest ever nominee, and that was Quvenzhané Wallis in Beasts of the Southern Wild.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, very cute year. Man, what are your thoughts? Let's talk through this as we go. Emmanuelle Riva, Jennifer Lawrence, Quvenzhané Wallis, Jessica Chastain in Zero Dark 30, and Naomi Watts in The Impossible. I've seen all of those, and I really like all of the films. I think there's strength in all of them. I don't know. Jennifer Lawrence is the big bombastic performer that year. And to that extent, I could see why she won. And everyone kind of had the Jennifer Lawrence thing. Boy, I don't know. Would you pick Emmanuelle Riva?
In terms of what she did with the role, yeah, I think I would have. I think for this film, for this slice of humanity, I think I would pick her because what we get with, and I, I'm a big fan of Jennifer Lawrence and of that movie in particular. And I also think that there is something to her and where she is in her career and what she brought. I mean, what she brought to the table was a great Jennifer Lawrence performance.
I feel like that's being a little disingenuous to how great they are in that film, because
great in that movie.
They are doing so much more than I had seen them do. So I personally would still pick Jennifer Lawrence because I think that it's a really surprising, quirky performance from her. So.
Well, and I know I sounds like I'm being super cynical, but I really mean this genuinely. Like, I feel like that was Jennifer Lawrence giving a great Jennifer Lawrence performance. And I am never it's hard to get lost in that performance, and I get lost in grief with this performance from Riva. It's exceptional craft, and There's also something politically to the whole, and I know Oscars pain me.
Here we are doing a 10-episode series about them.
I know. But there is something to the political nature of these performances, and I think it would make a hell of a story to have the oldest nominee win for the most challenging performance in the lot.
Trintignant did not get a nomination for Best Performance by an Actor in a Leading Role. So I want to know, if you're going to take someone out to put him in, who would you take out? And would you say that he wins? The winner was Daniel Day-Lewis in Lincoln. Bradley Cooper was nominated for Silver Linings Playbook. Denzel Washington for Flight. Hugh Jackman for Les Miserables. And Joaquin Phoenix in The Master. I wouldn't take any of them out.
I know, personally. I wouldn't take any of them out. I don't think that's justified. I think, I honestly think his Trintignant's performance was great. It was so mechanical. It doesn't hold up to just about anything that anyone else is doing on screen there.
Well, it's a very subtle, quiet performance, and that's why it's hard when you're looking at bigger performances, and anyway. Okay, so next up we had Best Directing. Michael Haneke lost to Ang Lee for Life of Pi, who we talked about last week. Best Original Screenplay lost to Django Unchained, Quentin Tarantino. And here's where it did win, Best Foreign Language Film. That was the win it had. And the other nominees were A Royal Affair, Kon-Tiki, No, and War Witch. I have now watched all of these, and I have to say, this is actually my least favorite of the bunch. I don't think any of them are 5-star films, and honestly, I don't think any of them should have been nominated for Best Picture. But I would absolutely put Royal Affair up as the top of my picks for Best Foreign Language Film.
I haven't seen all of them, so I don't feel like I can say it. I haven't seen A Royal Affair. I've seen Kon-Tiki and No. I haven't seen War Witch. So I stand with Andy.
The César Awards, these are the French Oscars. It had 10 nominations total, and it ended up winning for Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, Best Film, Best Original Screenplay. It lost Best Cinematography to Farewell My Queen, as well as Best Production Design. Editing lost to Rust and Bone, and Sound lost to My Way. And Supporting Actress Isabelle Huppert lost to Valeria Benguigui in What's in a Name. All told, Emmanuelle Riva, it looks like she won about a dozen or so of her about 45 nominations, and Jean-Louis Trintignant won about one of about a dozen nominations. So there's the differential between nominations for those two performances.
How'd it do at the box office?
Well, Haneke started with a budget of $9.7 million, which is $10.8 million in today's dollars. His movie premiered at Cannes in May 2012, before opening in Germany September 20th, 2012, then France October 24th, 2012. Finally opened in the U.S. December 19th, 2012, opposite The Guilt Trip, Jack Reacher, This Is 40, the 3D re-release of Monsters, Inc., and the limited release of Zero Dark 30 and The Impossible. With the dark subject matter, this had a tough road to hoe and only ever got high enough to break into the top 20 once after the Oscar announcements, when it landed in spot 19. This film went on to earn $6.7 million domestically and $30 million internationally, giving it a total adjusted gross of $41.2 million, which lands it with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $239,000. Still, it is a profit to be happy with.
So I'm curious, this is one of those films, I finished watching it, and I did my Flickchart ranking, and I thought, you know what, that's not great. But I wonder if this is a film that's going to really grow on me. It certainly has, over the course of our conversation, over the course of the last day or two, just find myself thinking about it. I didn't enjoy my experience of the film, and I'd already slated this one as being one of those movies I'm going to watch once. But now that you've seen it twice, did it improve?
Certainly. I mean, the first time I watched it, I was probably in a place more like you, where I was just like, I was not in a place to watch a movie like that. Mm-hmm. And it ended up really low on my Flickchart. After this rewatch, I found more strengths in it and everything. I still, like I said, I wouldn't put it up on the awards for all of this, like so many critics did. But it did climb in ranks, personally. So.
Okay. Well, we should take it to the mat and see how it does.
We should.
All right. Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You'll see all of the films that we've talked about on this very show. If you swipe over in your show notes and you tap the word Flickchart, it will take you over to this film in the Flickchart database, and you can add it to your list, see how it stands up against ours.
First up, best foreign language for best picture battle. Amour or Il Postino, the Postman?
Il Postino.
Il Postino. Amour or The Brood?
Delightful. The Brood.
Yeah, I'll say The Brood.
Yep.
Such a Amour or The Hudsucker Proxy?
Hudsucker.
I'd watch Hudsucker first. Amour or Next Friday? Oh, Amour.
Yeah, Next Friday was not Amour.
Amour or The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas?
Whorehouse, please.
Here I'll say Amour.
Do you know what? Okay. For the record, this is not. There are fights worth fighting. This isn't the one.
Right. Amour or Labor Day?
Oh dear, all that baking.
All those peaches. I will say Amour.
Okay, yeah, Amour. Yeah, Labor Day, rough.
Amour, it wasn't that rough. I think people give it a hard. It was okay. Amour or Near Dark? Catherine Bigelow, vampires.
Oh man,
I'm gonna take Near Dark.
Okay, Near Dark.
Amour would have been better if vampires were in it.
Right?
Just saying.
It could have been a whole vampire thing. The final scene, she wakes.
Right.
Do you know, maybe that's why they both walk out the door together. They are actually vampires.
They're both vampires now. Except her body is still there. Well, it's daytime. She's sleeping.
Yeah, she's sleeping.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Right,
well, we figured that out. Where were you again?
Another best foreign language for best picture battle. Amour or The Emigrants?
Oh, Amour.
I'm The Emigrants here.
Oh, no, we're gonna do it on this one.
We're gonna duke it out? All right, here we go. One, two, three. Scissors.
Oh, I'm in the slump of my career.
I know. Amour or Gone with the Wind?
Amour.
Well, that puts Amour in spot 416 on our chart. 416 out of 468, which is pretty low. That drops it to an 11%.
That's pretty low. Oh, dear.
Well, we have talked about a lot of good movies.
Yeah, we've talked about some bad ones, too. And this one is actually below some bad ones.
A lot of movies that we love, though, I should say.
That's true.
Well, you know what? It's flick chart. We can't rank it against all 480 some movies.
That is true. Although
we could. It would just take some time.
It wasn't that far off in my own list. How'd it do on yours?
It landed in spot, like I said, it climbed. It ended up, it was really low, like toward the bottom. Now it's more toward the middle. It's landed in spot 2471 out of 4463, or about a 45%.
There we go. So it's only slightly better than mine. Landed at 851 out of 1465. That's a 42%. According to the algorithm, if I go by Flickchart's recommendation over at letterboxd.com/thenextreel, this should be a 2-star film. Honestly, I turned it off and I thought, yeah, that's about a 2-star for me, but I'll probably give it a heart. It's one of those weird Letterboxd head controversies where I didn't enjoy my experience with it, but I'll go ahead and give it a heart because I recognize the performative aspects of this film were quite good.
And see, I'm a little backwards from you. I'm ranking it higher because I see a lot of strong qualities in it, but I'm not giving it a heart. I gave it 3.5 without a heart. So that was kind of my way of thinking, a little opposite of you.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? It actually averages out, I think, probably about where it needs to be.
2 3/4 with a heart. There you go.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I'm kind of glad this one is under our belts. Where do we go from here?
Well, we're in the window of best foreign language films nominated for Best Picture, where they're catching on. If they give it a one-word title, it's gonna have a better chance of getting in here. Amour, and then a few years later, 2018, we have Roma, Alfonso Cuarón's autobiographical film about his youth, and I'm looking forward to jumping back into that one. And, if I have time, I'm looking forward to seeing what some of the Criterion bonus features are. I don't know if I will, but I sure hope I get a chance because it is a loaded disc.
Beefy movie. All right. Well, I can't wait to do that when the movie ends.
Our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andrew.
As Amazon always doeth.
Sometimes they do. And I feel like I didn't I didn't go to Amazon, Andy. That's the truth of it. I didn't even go to Amazon because I was so curious. I was so curious what would happen over at commonsensemedia.org. Have any kids seen this movie, and what do they think about kids seeing this movie? Because it's an experience that they are so far from, right? So I thought, I wonder what the kids are saying. And it turns out 3 kids have seen this movie. And the general consensus is that Common Sense Media is way too hard on this movie, believe it or not. So I'm going to just read you a couple of snippets. A 13-year-old says, first off, this is a stellar movie and the best foreign language film I've ever seen. 13 years old.
Wow.
Now that's out of the way. Common Sense, in a fashion similar but less justified to what they did to Romeo and Juliet, rated the age way too high. The only reason I can think to justify that a mature 13-year-old couldn't watch this is that they wouldn't be interested, which is true, especially considering it's a French movie. There's one scene of violence. You've given movies with several scenes of violence 3 dots. And honestly, while the female lead is shown bathing, nothing is shown. You're way too hard on this movie. A 14-year-old says, this is a one-of-a-kind achievement. It's filmed with passion with a disturbing plot. 5 stars. Here's another 14-year-old. Amour is riveting, moving, and powerful, but it is not enjoyable or appealing to teens. This is a strongly acted film done with passion and style. It is absorbing, although depressing and somehow dark, but again, in a sad way. All 3 of these kids, teens, 5 stars. No, I lied. 5, 4, and 5.
Wow.
Mine couldn't sit through it. I tried.
Yeah.
They were bored.
I didn't even bother trying with mine.
Yeah.
Like, woof.
What did Amazon have to say?
Well, Amazon, as you know, there are always a crop of people who are very upset that it's in a different language than English. Yes. And it's surprising. This was in English. I returned it 1 star. But I do have a 1 star from Amazon customer who had this to say. When the stroke hits your wife and it will take her life, that's Amour. I hated this movie. I don't know who would like this movie. Probably clinically depressed people who need that little nudge to push them off the edge. It's sad and depressing and rings way too close to home from personal experience. I don't watch movies to have a grim reality cloaked around me like a heavy fog of mustard gas. That's what the news is for.
First singing review.
That's why people come.
Oh my goodness. That's Amour. Thanks, Amazon. It's hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a lot of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchase is made through our links. Give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We covered a lot of great movies that were adapted from other material in Season 10.
Our Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals is where listeners can purchase the source material behind all our adapted film discussions. It helps support the show at no extra cost when you buy through our links.
In our foreign language Best Picture nominees series, we looked at several adaptations, including Z, The Postman Il Postino, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Letters from Iwo Jima.
We hit the high seas with In the Heart of the Sea from Nathaniel Philbrick's nonfiction book for our Aquatic Killers series.
Definitely a weaker entry in that series.
I bet the book is better.
Oh, me too.
Member bonus episodes featured adaptations like Gone Girl, The Russia House, Ivanhoe, The Hot Rock, The Big Heat, and Naked Lunch.
Oliver Stone brought not just original stories, but also adaptations like Conan the Barbarian, Scarface, Year of the Dragon, 8 Million Ways to Die, Talk Radio, and Born on the 4th of July.
Mary Herron's disturbingly insightful American Psycho was adapted from the Bret Easton Ellis book.
You like Huey Lewis in the News?
Oh my God, it even has a watermark.
And of course, more Stephen King with The Mist, The Green Mile, and The Shawshank Redemption for our King a la Darabont series.
Find links to all of these books and more adapted films on our Originals page. That's thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports our show.
Get the full list of books that we've talked about and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.